Hey everyone, Tactics here. Today we got a pretty big post from Blizzard discussing some updates incoming for Season 2 Mythic Plus when it comes to key difficulty, rewards, and placement of affixes. Long story short, they're essentially going to be making keys easier across the board all the way up to plus 12s with the goal of helping out specifically people that are pugging, and they're going to be increasing the rewards from keys as well. So I will link this post down in the description for anyone that wants to read it themselves. But basically, they're just kind of talking about here how, pugs are their priority here and how, they've done things already to dungeons to make them a little bit more easy, more friendly to pugs, right? They've reduced tank damage intake by quite a bit, which is true. They've increased cast times of dangerous spells, also true. There's some spam caster problems, which I discussed in my previous Mythic Plus feedback video, which you can check out also in the description below. But they have increased cast times significantly, and just generally, there's a lot more mobs that have either 0 or 1 ability, as opposed to just everything having like 2 and sometimes 3 abilities. Again, sometimes this is not true, but generally they've done a good job at decreasing this, and now is where they're going to be tackling some of the other stuff related to the actual Mythic Plus system. They talk about delves here a bit and how this has kind of impacted the Mythic Plus system because a lot of people don't really do the lower key levels between like 2 or 6. There's like a very shallow applicant pool, as they say right here, and they kind of jump straight in at 7, and it can be quite punishing because there's a large amount of scaling already in, and of course there's that Challenger's Peril affix. So what are they going to be doing about this? So starting off with the rewards, baseline Mythic, so Mythic 0 dungeons are going to award champion track gear and be a weekly lockout. This is kind of like going back to, I think it was Dragonflight Season 4, where this was the case. Basically, they changed it this season to make them a daily lockout, I believe, and then they dropped veteran track gear, which, kind of basically made them not super useful, but putting them back up to the champion track gear, even if this comes with a weekly lockout, I think is going to be much, much nicer. They've also increased the damage and the health to reflect the improved rewards, but they still want to make it so that it's accessible for players to. That's where you start your season 2 journey for gearing and that kind of stuff. So this is, I think, generally a good change. On top of this, they're nerfing the overall scaling until the plus 10 level. So now, instead of being 10% per key level from 2 to 10, it's now 7%. So there's going to be a significant difficulty decrease, which they outline in a table that I'll get to shortly. But that is already, again, everything is going to be scaling less hard between the 2 and the 10 key level, which again is nicer for people kind of on ramping into the system. Next, they're adjusting where the affixes are placed. So Zalatas Bargain, this is going to be moving from plus 2 to plus 4. So that means when you do a plus 2 and a plus 3, they have no affixes on them. The first affix comes at plus 4, which is that rotating bargain set of affixes. Tyrannical and Fortified. The first one was previously on a plus 4. This is moving up to replace Challenger's Peril on a plus 7. And then the second one is still taking effect at a plus 10, which means if you're just doing your weekly keys, you just want to get your max vault, you're working through the system, getting up to that plus 10 level, Challenger's Peril doesn't exist for you. It's gone. You just have to deal, again, at plus 7, you'll get one of Tyrant or Fort. At plus 10, you'll get the other, but you will never have to deal with the, the 15-second death timers that Challenger's Peril applies to your key, which is pretty nice. It definitely helps to reduce the stress on tank players, which is something I was talking about in my previous video, where, if a tank dies in a key, it's like a 75-second timer increase with Challenger's Peril active, right? Because usually everyone dies if the tank dies, which is very stressful to players trying to pick up the tank role for the first time, or they're unfamiliar with the dungeons and they're just trying to learn. And so, coming in at the plus 7 key level, it was very, very stressful for tank players, and I'm glad this is being removed from here. It's not gone though, because as you can see at plus 12, instead of the additional 10% increase to enemy health, Guile is now going to include the increased timer penalty for deaths that was formerly part of Challenger's Peril as a replacement for the rotating bargain affixes. So we're still, if you're a key pusher, going to have to be dealing with the Challenger's Peril affix. I'm not happy about that personally. Again, I just want to see this affix absolutely shadow realmed, but for the vast majority of players participating in the Mythic Plus system, they are never going to see Challenger's Peril, especially for someone that just does weekly keys, or just, your stretch goal is like 10s or even 3K. You're barely going to see Challenger's Peril in that situation. So overall, these are definitely W's to the bulk of the player base, but we are not done. On top of all that stuff, they're also reducing the requirements for some key tier rewards. So hero track gear is now going to be available from +6 dungeons at the end of key, and you can see this chart down here. And notably, gilded crests available now at +7. So they're reducing that by key level. You get gildeds at +7 here. You see the hero track coming in here at 6, and they just generally what all the rewards are and where the affixes come in, and the new health and damage scaling number are all in this chart here. Again, linked in the description below if you want to read it. But basically now you're getting 20 gildeds if you're doing 12, so a pretty big boost there in terms of the number of gildeds. I do have some questions about this paragraph here for people that are pushing keys at 12 or above. So Guile currently on live servers is a 10% increase to health and damage. Now, Guile was changed, I sort of highlighted, boom, where on the PTR, where it now caused the scaling to be 12% per key level instead of 10% per key level. So that was already a somewhat nerf to Guile for the majority of push key levels. I think it started getting to be a buff to Guile at like a 17 or 18 or something like that. So generally, it was a nerf to Guile to make that the wall of difficulty much less of a jump. Now, my question is this here, they said the 10% increased enemy health. Are they saying that these changes are no longer relevant, and then instead Guile is going to be only the Challenger's Peril thing? Are they saying it's going to be Challenger's Peril plus a 10% damage increase, which I think would be a mistake. If you're only going to replace one of health or damage increase, I'd say replace the damage increase. Is this Challenger's Peril only including this timer penalty, or is it also including the increase to the dungeon timer as well? There's just a lot of question marks with this statement, which could make this either a pretty solid change to Guile or kind of a feels bad change to Guile. So I really want to see what that ends up being. I think in like an ideal world, this is just Guile is now just Challenger's Peril, right? But is it Guile is now Challenger's Peril with 10% damage? I'd be scared for that. I think that would be not ideal. Again, please shadow realm this affix in general, but I think if it's only the key pushers in organized groups generally that are dealing with it, it's probably not the end of the world. Most people are going to be happy with that change. Now, there is one other change that is at the very bottom here, and that is to the Keystone Legend achievement. So this is the new achievement they put in that basically initially made it so that keys couldn't deplete below a +12. So what they're doing with this achievement actually is, one, they're moving it up to 3K because they've made dungeons easier with all the scaling changes. So they want to keep the difficulty of getting the achievement the same. Plus 3K is a nice even number, so that kind of makes sense. But they are going to be separating the floor for high-level keystones from this achievement. They're making them two completely separate things, and instead, so when you get this achievement, it's basically, I believe it's just a different mount. You get a different mount for this achievement at 3K, and now, if you want to unlock the floor, all you need to do is time the keys at that level. So if you've timed all 8 keys at a +12, you can no longer deplete below +12, but this isn't just for +12s. This goes all the way up to every single key level. So above a +12 rather. So if you time all 13s, your new floor is 13. All 14s, your new floor is 14. So this is a really big change, a really positive change for key pushers. I'm sure a lot of people who are pushing for like title or just pushing as high as they can go are going to be really happy for this change specifically. It's going to be nice for people that try and pug these higher keys, right? Because previously, you go in with your own 15 and you get a couple bad pug groups, you go down all the way down to like a 12 and you're like, why am I even doing my key? I don't need anywhere near a 12. This is super annoying. But now if you're doing a 15 and you're someone who's timed all 14s, you get a bad group or 2 or 3, your key's still a 14. It's still like a decent level key. So this is a big W change for key pushers for sure. Again, this is my only question mark out of all of these changes, but I think across the board here, this is almost all wins. Definitely all wins for the players that only play in the like 2 to 12 bracket, who are going to be getting better crests, better or earlier better gear, easier key levels, all those things. A couple things I'd still like to see, maybe a way to get Mythic 2 from the vault, so you don't go up a track by going to 12, but you get some crest savings, because Mythic Plus is a bit lacking in crest savings. I would also like to see a revamp to the Great Vault token rewards. I've talked about that, I think, in a few other videos recently, so I won't go into it here, but they could definitely be improved with the reduced value of sockets. But overall, I'm very happy with these changes paired with the, dungeon tuning changes they've been making over the last few weeks. And that was going to be all for this video, but apparently they also just posted a ton of dungeon tuning. So let's take a look at that. So and I think people are going to be very happy with the title of this post: adjustments to the minecart event and graveyard. So these were a couple of my bigger criticisms of the season, and again in that video that I posted a few days ago. So let's go into this here. So Cinderbrew timer increased from 30 to 33 minutes. They're adding abilities that can be kicked now. This was a key problem, I think, with this dungeon. Bestial Wrath was a specific ability I discussed, and the taste testers also were something I discussed, but they're making the actual random target damage now interruptible, which is it's also fine. I think this technically turns them into spam casters maybe, but we'll have to wait and see. They increased the Bestial Wrath cast time as well, and they also just increased ability cooldowns for a ton of mobs. So these huge W changes. W. Rookery. Defeating Kairos' update to the graveyard location to the Stormrider Barracks. Okay, so this is the first boss. I want to say this is where I suggested it, at the bottom of the tower, but I don't know where exactly the Stormrider Barracks is. It could just be where the guy flies you. Instead of having to run through and fly, it just spawns you where he would have dropped you off, which also would be is better. So we'll see exactly where the Stormrider Barracks is, but W. Rookery had a terrible graveyard run, so boom. No longer leaves area denial. Okay, so this is the puddles from the first boss were super annoying. They're gone. Good. Cursed Thunderers have been removed or replaced. So these were the mobs that I said are the spam casters, where there's 4 of them in an individual pull. So these guys are now gone. W. Void Curse. Void Crush no longer leaves area denial, so less circles on the ground for you to be worried about. And then also, again, bunch of increased cooldowns. W changes. Dark Flame Cleft. 34-minute timer, increasing the time. BlazeCon updated the graveyard location to the Waxatory. I assume this is BlazeCon's room. W. This is exactly, again, where I wanted the graveyard to be updated to. You're just being spawned now when you defeat the second boss in the second boss's room, I assume. Minecart event. Here you go, everybody. So the graveyard location updated. Okay, good. W. Movement speed significantly increased while out of combat specifically. Okay, you still have to be out of combat, but they've reduced the health of all the mobs in the minecart event by 10%. They've reduced the health of the last boss by 10%, and they've increased the health at which the encounter ends as well. So that's going to be a much shorter boss fight overall. Again, you're dealing 10% less health during this, but they also reduce the health and increase the threshold, so it's effectively the same, I believe. And then a few increased cooldowns as well. Again, W. We'll see how fast the minecart goes. I think I suggested a speed increase both in and out of combat, as well as a decay reduction. This is just a speed increase, but they've also reduced the health of mobs, so we'll see how that goes. Priority to the Sacred Flame. Defeating the second boss upgrades the graveyard to right in the second boss. Boom. Again, huge W changes. Graveyards, I think, basically are solved now. These were these 3 dungeons were the main issue dungeons when it comes to graveyards. All of them are fixed. W. Some nerfs to Baron Braunpike, who was a pretty hard boss, I think. And then just every mob in existence getting their cooldowns increased. Boom. I still expect there to be some spam caster problems in the last boss room, but this is a great start. Actually, the Risen Mage and the Devout Priest are on this list, so maybe not. Maybe they have actually fixed that, so that would be very hype. And now some Operation Floodgate stuff. So they've nerfed Shredation. This was the pulsing damage, I believe, in the guys at the end room, so they made it last tick 1 second longer, but it also gets increased damage. So we'll see. They added an interrupt, which is good. This dungeon was lacking interrupts. They increased the cast time of the spam kick, and they increased the cooldown of their dispel. Good. Some nerfs there. Swamp Phase also getting some cast time increase on tank busters. Thank you. Give tanks time to react. Same with the Guile Gigazap. And also just some highlighting and increasing damage if you fail the mechanic. Okay, so I am very, very, very happy with all of these changes. I think they address a lot of the things I talked about in that Mythic Plus video. This combined with this, guys, I am actually, hype levels are off the charts, guys. Hype levels are off the charts. Let me know what you guys think down in the comments below. Has this changed your perspective on Season 2? Are you still worried? If you are worried, what are you worried about? Let me know down in the comments below. Of course, I need to shout out my amazing Patreons for their continued support, and I'll see everyone in the next video.